Nearly 250 years after successfully overthrowing a monarchy, the United States is rushing back to one as the Supreme Court ruled that presidents have absolute immunity from prosecution if they're performing official acts. Now, who decides whether they're performing official acts? They do, of course, right? Obviously, that is a no-brainer. However, if the president is off duty, like they're an off-duty president, like in the evenings and they're like at a bar and they get into a fist fight with someone who is like a Chiefs fan, like that's not an official act because that's an off-duty president. So that they could end up in the drunk tank and that would be super legit. Anyway, in a 6-3 decision in Trump v. United States, it determined, or the majority determined, the conservative majority determined that any action taken by the president under the authority given to him by the Constitution is, quote, conclusive and preclusive. What is preclusive? And thus, he cannot be prosecuted. I wrote down he, but it could be anyone. Remember, we're making kings and queens. Anything that is an official act cannot be prosecuted. And so just to take you guys a little bit more deeper, bear with me while I take you through a Vox article. So what are the things that are official? Well, private conversations between the president and the majority opinion written by John Roberts details how broad that immunity is in practice. Roberts claims that Trump is immune from prosecution for conversations between himself and high-ranking Justice Department officials, where he urged them to pressure the states to replace their legitimate electors with fraudulent members of the Electoral College who would vote to install Trump for a second term. Remember, this entire case was because Trump's attorney said, well, Trump was the president, so he could technically do whatever he wanted, including January 6th and trying to overturn the election. And so they were like, okay. Elsewhere in the opinion, Roberts suggests that any conversation between Trump and one of his advisors or subordinates could not be the basis for prosecution, and explaining why Trump's attempts to pressure Vice President Mike Pence to fraudulently alter the election results likely cannot be prosecuted. For example, Roberts points to the fact that the vice president frequently serves, quote, as one of the president's closest advisors. In other words, official act. Robert's second conclusion is that the presidents also enjoy, and get this, at least a presumptive immunity from criminal prosecution for a president's acts within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility. Thus, if a president's action even touches on his official authority, the, quote, outer perimeter of that authority, then the president enjoys a strong presumption of immunity from prosecution. So again, we're still not in unofficial acts, just the outer perimeter of official. I don't know why I keep on thinking, my mind is like Bill Clinton telling Monica that it's official, like while it's going on. I'm just like, it is official, you know? I don't know how to do a Clinton.
It just sounds to me like yeah. The president can now just like do a purge every day, like the movie The Purge, just doing that every day for their whole term with complete impunity.
Well, I mean, unless they say this is unofficial. Today, I'm feeling unofficial, and so I'm going to kill thousands of people unofficially.
Well, but isn't the whole thing that like the definition of what's official and what's unofficial is so blurry?
Sure, but maybe they want to just kind of play with you. But yes, that's exactly the point. So, and the entire thing is not on, your mind, you look at the case and you're like, wait, why is everyone talking about assassination? Well, that's because Trump's defense attorney straight up said that actually would be included in some kind of presidential immunity. And that's the question that loomed over this case. The judge asked if Trump could be, this was the judge, his lawyer answered. The judge asked if he could be prosecuted if he ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. And Trump's lawyer answered that he could not, unless Trump had previously been successfully impeached and convicted for doing so. Yeah, sure. And that Robert's opinion apparently goes even farther than even that. So if presidential authority is conclusive and preclusive when the president exercises the constitutionally granted powers, the court appears to have ruled that yes, Trump could order the military to assassinate one of his political opponents and nothing can be done to him for it because he's the commander-in-chief of the Army, Navy. We've legalized military juntas. We've legalized coups, but it's so like it's in that fancy font. So it's like, it's chill. There are unofficial acts. Before I kick this over to you, Prem, Roberts does concede the president may be prosecuted for unofficial acts. So Caitlin naysayer, if Trump had personally attempted to shoot and kill then presidential candidate Joe Biden in the lead up to the 2020 election, rather than ordering a subordinate to do so, then Trump could probably be prosecuted for murder. So if he actually pulled the trigger. So don't say that this is absolute. But
so sorry.
Yeah, please. Prem, the highest court in the land. Here we go.
What's just amazing to think about, or amazing, perhaps mind-numbing, whatever adjective you'd like to choose, is that it's very wild to consider that, this is a 6-3 decision. Trump had appointed 3 of the justices who not only helped rule on this case, but also on helping overturn abortion rights, on helping free America from corporate America, rather, from regulation, who the same court that just ruled that homeless people can be considered criminals for sleeping outside, while I guess apparently presidents who commit crimes are immune from that or any such misdeed. It's just like the compounding ways that this guy got to pick 3 justices to then say he's immune from anything he could do, all while, of course, even further, he didn't win the popular vote. Like, it's just like cascading examples of how this country not only defers to power so often, but that power can just kind of make rules as it goes, even if a majority of the people, whether like by voting or just by their opinion, would disagree with them.
Yeah.
It's just such so much in 2 weeks that underlines all of it.
Yeah, and I think the word is corruption. It's pure, unadulterated corruption. It's bribery. It's, again, it is a coup on every single level. This is the judicial branch consolidating not only their power, but the power of the executive. And their power within the Chevron doctrine and overturning that. So basically, regulatory agencies like the EPA can no longer, regulate and do what they do. They're not the experts anymore. The courts are the experts, which is wild to me. I thought maybe it kicked with the Chevron doctrine, I thought it kicked to the legislature, but no, it's just the courts, back to the courts. They're going to be ruling on every single, toxin and whether or not that's legal or not. Like, it'll be up to them, not up to scientists, biologists, anybody, whatever, climatologists to regulate our environment. That's just one aspect of it. But anyway, tis a dark day, guys. It's bad. And I wanted to show that, Elie Mystal always has a way of putting things. And so I appreciated his writing in The Nation. Says, unlike other officials, presidents are now entitled to absolute immunity from criminal charges. Even a cop can be charged with, say, murder, hence my bad off-duty joke, even if they argue that killing people is part of their jobs, but not presidents. Presidents can murder, rape, steal, and pretty much do whatever they want, so long as they argue that murdering, raping, or stealing is part of the official job of the president of the United States. There's no crime that pierces the veil of absolute immunity. I mean, it kind of is, but usually it's killing people over there, sometimes here. Now, the other thing is how intractable this is. So Elie writes, and then there's essentially nothing we can do to change it. The courts created qualified immunity for public officials, but it can be undone by state or federal legislatures if they pass a law removing that protection. Not so with absolute presidential immunity. The court here says that absolute immunity is required by separation of powers inherent in the Constitution, meaning the Congress cannot take it away. Congress, according to the Supreme Court, does not have the power to pass legislation saying the president can be prosecuted for crimes. Impeachment, and only impeachment, is the way to punish presidents, and somewhat obviously impeachment does nothing to a president who already is no longer in office, right? Nor one who was in office and was impeached twice, but not actually removed by the vote. But you guys, AOC is now introducing supposedly articles of impeachment against Supreme Court justices. I was like, all of them? I'm assuming Alito and Clarence Thomas, to Prem your point of them not recusing themselves, even though they were completely A-okay with what happened on January 6th. And we're like, let's go, release the Kraken. But here's my question, Caitlin.
Yeah.
What should Biden do with his newfound immunity?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't think he will do this, but this is what he should do, is call for the assassination of, and make sure it's executed, of the 6 Supreme Court justices who, ruled this, and then that'll
purge
show
on the
them.
justices. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then they'll learn their lesson, because they'll be dead, and the president won't be prosecuted for it.
Let's go, Dark Brett. Just put a bounty on their fucking heads. Like, seriously, like, I don't believe in violence except for these 6 people. You know what I'm saying? And no, neither, obviously, Caitlin has less to worry about, but Prem does not condone what I just said. It's a comedy podcast. But yeah,
I'm serious. I'm not even joking.
But yeah, this is the thing. Part of me was like, well, he should, universal health care and raise the minimum wage. It's like, no, Francesca, crimes. Think crimes. What should Biden do criminally? Prem, any ideas of what Biden should do, even though he won't do any of these things?
I mean, it's tough because this is just a microcosm of what seems to be a broader conversation over and over again of just a very structural incongruity into what Republicans do with power versus what Democrats do with power. And Republicans, I mean, especially buttressed by all the structural advantages they have with regards to things like the Electoral College and so on, that gives them power that maybe in a truly wholly democratic society they might not necessarily have. They use that power even if one might call it unearned. Whereas even if Democrats earn power and get people's votes, there's always some sort of secondary sort of request or thing on the horizon to say, once we get X more votes, we can then do Y abstract thing. And I think this is all the more highlighted by, what you pulled from Ellie's article about just the idea that the court says that Congress is not allowed to sort of just essentially disagree with what they're saying.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so we have 3 branches of government. We were told that they check and balance each other. One of them is just saying, too bad, so sad. You can't actually put a check on us, even though we are 9 people unelected, and you ostensibly are people who are elected.
Yep.
And then so there's a stalemate there. Not that there should be. I think Congress could still act. There's nothing that necessarily says that they can't anyways, like with tools like impeachment and so on. Right. But also there's one other branch, which is the executive. And so beyond, procedural things, whether it's pursuing impeachment or pressing the judiciary committees to do more than just send angry letters, there's an expressive function to the presidency that has played either very small or very large roles, depending on who was there, who was in the chair. Yeah. And one thing that was a discussion in the primaries in 2020, one thing that's been a discussion since on any number of issues, from climate to labor to taking on corporations, is how far will Joe Biden go in saying the thing, whether the thing is like corporations can't, expand the courts. Corporations can't dictate our politics. Corporations can't choose whether we can or cannot breathe clean air, whether our working people get to have a fair wage. And
Israel should be responsible for war crimes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so policy is just as much something that follows what the bounds of possibility are made to be. And those bounds of possibility are influenced by what politicians do and don't say.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of this, that beyond any sort of specific policy prescription that one could imagine, and there are quite a few, that it's not even being called for by the people with the most power is one of the biggest barriers from that even becoming something that's actually comes to fruition.
Right. I mean, speaking it into existence is the first step. And I think what's interesting is you're seeing this is the same week that people are speaking. I mean, they've been speaking this into existence for a long time, speaking the idea of Biden stepping down as the Democratic nominee for president. And they're saying it loudly. And it's not just progressives saying it. In fact, they're not leading the charge for that to happen. But then you have to, it's frustrating when this assault on our judicial system and this takeover, the far right takeover of the Supreme Court, has been so in our faces for decades now. And it takes AOC to be like, I'm introducing articles of impeachment. This is a centrist position. Introducing articles of impeachment against 2 compromised justices is an absolutely centrist position right now. If our democracy was normal and functioning and healthy, that's what we would have done. And so I'm glad she's doing it, but it's so scary because you're like, oh, no, this is not consensus. This is not what people are writing a bunch of op-eds about. This is seen now as like a progressive thing to fight back versus what absolutely we should have done.
Yeah, and again, like, just one other point is that, again, back to the sort of incongruities between the parties, Republicans will file articles of impeachment on virtually anything. They'll use the time that taxpayers pay for them to do their jobs to file articles on any number of things against any official that they can. Whereas Democrats have a very clear case of corruption that's been laid out over decades against at least 2, if not more, Supreme Court justices. And like you said, maybe a few will even say the word, and only 1 member of Congress is now actually doing the thing. Right. And so once again, it's just a reminder over and over again, not only are the incentives of the parties different, but their actual actions in response to those incentives also different.
Yeah. Or he could just like steal some cars. That'd be kind of sick, like I just feel like
he should test the waters. He should dip his toes just a little bit just to see what the response is.
I mean, if he stole a Cybertruck and was like presidential immunity, like wouldn't that be a fun little stunt? Like if Biden won't drop out, steal a Cybertruck, drive it around, leave it at like in the middle of a tarmac at an airport, and then be like, "Fuck you."
It happens in movies all the time.
Exactly.
Where a cop shows his little badge and he's like, I need this vehicle. Keanu Reeves did it in Speed, and it's happened dozens of times since. So the president should also think about it.
And it actually makes a point, at least. Like, at least you're actually communicating something. Like, if you think it's dumb, then show why it's dumb.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do